Okay, so it's Kern Watts here, back for another edition of Growth Mindset. Um, this one's going to be quite sincere. We want to discuss the verdict in the George Floyd case and trial. Orlando, you want to do an introduction?
Yeah, how you doing? This is Orlando Iglesias here. Welcome like Kern said, another episode of the Growth Mindsets. We kind of wanted to touch base a little bit on the George Floyd case today. It's a hot topic, and I know a lot of people have been talking about it on social media and everything. So I'll start off with you, Kern. Like, what do you think about that whole case? What happened and what transpired with the verdict?
Okay, so the case from the beginning, let's just talk about the situation. I think it was uh, overdone in terms of let's just say the punishment. Um, the time that it was happening was uncalled for. And obviously, this is hindsight. We've had time to think about it. But the main problem was communication, because at that point, the individual wasn't communicating.
Mhm.
And when you don't communicate, whether you're cutting yourself off or not listening to somebody else, um, you're not empathizing, you're not understanding, you're in a different mindset. And so you're not actually aware of what could be occurring. And so, in my opinion, I think that obviously these people are employed to protect and serve. So that should be first and foremost. Um, but I see that as being like a huge, major flag in what was going to happen, um, and in other instances as well. That's what I see. Just starting at that point. Do you want to comment on that as well?
You know, to be honest, I kind of want to go a little bit further back. I think we have to normalize, in my opinion, as a society of just getting all the facts. I mean, sometimes when something happens, we're so quick to judge, right? And we're just so quick to judge and to say, yeah, he's guilty or he's not guilty or whatever's happening, right? And just let things fall where they may and then get all the facts and then make an informed decision. And I think that goes across in everything, right? Like just to elaborate a little bit, we had like, there was that little case about a week ago with that football player from LA. I won't give his name, um, but he had that little case where somebody was trying to sue him because they said that he assaulted them. And then when the video came out and everybody's like, I knew he was guilty. You see how he is and all this. And then next thing you know, when the video comes out, the football player was actually the person breaking up the fight and actually saved the guy. Right. And so we need to just stop giving judgment without having all the evidence. Right. And then another thing that happens is in this case, and I like to talk about the specific case with George Floyd, it's like when somebody loses their life, like we just got to see that it's a person who lost their life and stop trying to discredit that person's character.
Mm-hmm.
Because in that moment, whatever they did in the past didn't matter. Nobody deserves to lose their life,
Yes.
right? At that point in time, right? Like nobody deserves that. And I think that that's one of the things. And I don't know if it happens throughout all races. I just think that it happens too often where somebody loses their life. And then the first thing that the media does is attack their character. Oh, this guy failed out of school. Or this guy was in jail when he was 3 years old or whatever. And it's just like, we need to just stop that. Like, just look at what happened. Like, when you look at the facts, nobody deserves to have a knee on their neck for 9+ minutes,
Nobody.
like at all. And so this case really, and I remember when this happened because it was kind of like in the beginning of when the pandemic hit. And so to me, it hit me really hard. And it hit me hard because you see certain people stroll up and down, and the country was divided at that time. You had the Black Lives Matter going on, And then you see a lot of things on social media. And I went to high school with a lot of guys, some of them were cops. And then you see some of the comments that they say, and then you're like, wow, like this is how you truly feel. Not only cops, just regular people. And you're just sitting there like, wow, right? Like you don't even consider who's on your page or what have you. And it's okay to have an opinion, but when you don't even see both sides, and to me, that's the whole thing. It's about having a conversation and seeing both sides. So I see both sides. You're a cop, you're trying to do your job. But one thing that I've always stressed, and we, if I've had this conversation with my wife, I'm like, you know what? There's two people that I can think of off the top of my head that I don't need in my life that has a shaky hand. And that's a surgeon, if I ever need surgery, and that's a cop. Those are two people I need to make sure that they have steady hands. I can't have them be fearful and accidentally slip with a knife or accidentally slip with a gun or accidentally stay on somebody's neck for too long, right? And so I think being a cop is very hard, and I don't take that away from. I don't say that lightly because I have friends who are cops, and it's a hard job.
Mm-hmm.
But people need to understand that it's a choice. The same way that I choose to work on what I'm doing, that's not who I am. That's what I do. And so when you become a cop, you chose that life. So you chose the stress. And you chose that responsibility. And for the people out there who love Marvel, what do they say, Spider-Man? You know, with great power comes great responsibility. And to be a cop, you do have a lot of power. And so you definitely have to use that wisely, and you have to be very responsible for that because you're there to protect and serve, and you actually work for the people. And so, and that's kind of like where I'm at on that particular thing. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more before we go a little bit deeper into the verdict and all that?
So in terms of what you were saying, just think of the actual action in that specific point. I just want to touch on one thing you said that I think is very important, and I wonder what's happening with society. But we have a society that looks for victim blaming as well, right? And as you said, something that happened to the person when they were two comes into play at that point in time. But that might have happened. And I was reading an inspirational post, and it said, your past is what you have done, but it's not who you are.
Absolutely.
And and people forget that when they go into victim blaming.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching this murder mystery, and it was, long story short, it was a husband that killed his wife and children. And people actually had the audacity to post that she was in the wrong and she drove him to do it and all of this stuff. And so, like, regardless of whatever happened, think of the actual act, and you are posting that you think somebody deserved to be killed, right? So I think we need to look at that and look in the mirror instead of typing on a computer and what actually matters, the instance. And in those instances, there is a clear right or wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Who
And,
cares?
you know,
Who cares what people look like?
mhm.
There is a clear right or wrong. If you flip it and it doesn't matter what color people are, if you flip it and some individual is on a police officer's neck for 9 minutes and they die, you would say that that person is wrong. So just because you're wearing a uniform, what you're doing still makes you accountable, regardless of whatever uniform you are wearing. Or if you're not even wearing a uniform, that instance is an example of you, um, your character
Yeah.
in that moment. Your
Mm-hmm.
character in that moment is being judged, and we all have those moments in life. All right, that's what makes a person trustworthy. That's what makes a person who they are. Is when all the chips are on the table. It could be a stressful situation. It could not even be a stressful situation. But are you a person that when you get the upper hand or the power, are you looking to be vengeful, or are you looking to pay it forward and pass it on to someone else?
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. No, you're right. And going down to this verdict, it was a great. I mean, justice has been served in that aspect that he got charged for what he did. But I think we have so much further to go, right? Because there's been so many other cops in the past year who've gotten off on murders and things that have happened in that source, right? So I think like I was having this conversation with my wife's cousin, and earlier today, and they were just saying like, man, like it's great that he got arrested and this and that. I'm like, yeah, but things are not going to change until you're held accountable. Like now that's an accountability thing. And now you can actually serve jail time. And I think when you're not scared of your actions, I think that's where it happens. I think when you're not scared of the repercussions of your actions, then you're reckless with it. But when you know that there are going to be repercussions for your personal actions, like there are going to be consequences for that, then you're going to be more cautious on how you move. And I think until they change the law and really hold people accountable for their actions, then we're going to still be in this cycle, right? Because yeah, it's one win and it's a good win, and it's not even a win, because nobody wins in this situation. We still have a person who will never walk this earth again, right? And so
Yes.
the best win would have been that he would still be alive, and if he was guilty of whatever, he would have just served his time. That
Yes.
would have been a win. So in this situation, there is no win, but at least justice was served. And so I hope that
Exactly.
just digging deeper, that now we look into the laws that really protect people, and that they get treated as such, right? Like you already have a body cam, right? And your body cam is going to let you know exactly what transpired. And if everything is not on the up and up, then you should be held accountable. But if your body cam shows that everything that you did, you try to de-escalate it, you feared for your life, and it's as black as white as it is on your camera, then yeah, then you go on and you're innocent or what have you. But if it shows clear as day that it's murder and or something else could have been done, then yeah, like you need to serve your time, right? Like the same way you and I would if we committed that crime,
Hmm.
right? Like if I committed that crime and was on somebody's neck for 9 minutes and a few seconds, nobody would have brought up and said, hey, he was a criminal. They would have been like, man, that guy right there, Orlando killed that guy in cold blood. And that would have been the conversation. But because you see somebody in blue, they can't do wrong. Like at the end of the day, they're only human as well. So who polices the police? That's really what I want to get to the root of it. Like, so the police us, but somebody always has to police the police, right? Like who's policing them to make sure that they do the right things, right? And for the and like people always say like that stuff doesn't happen in Canada, but a couple of years ago there was uh, a guy, I forget his name, but I seen it on CTV, right? And he was in Calgary, and the cops actually dragged him to an abandoned lot and beat him up pretty bad. And if it wasn't for a helicopter that actually caught it, like this kid could have done some real jail time, right? But luckily, his lawyer in Edmonton actually tracked down the helicopter that was passing by and filmed it and was able to. And even with all that evidence, they didn't even want to drop the charges on the guy, right? So there's like a lot of it, like it happens every
Yep.
day. This is not just a U.S. issue. This is a world issue, and especially still here in Canada and Calgary, right? So
Yep.
yeah.
And it happened in Toronto. There was an individual who actually played for the Toronto Argos, and there was an instance where he was in a parking lot. It was, like, say, a Friday or a Saturday, and he met some friends. They were looking to go to a bar. Police officers saw him, and they stopped him alone in his vehicle. And he actually was assisting the police in, let's just say, urban relations.
Yes, I do remember.
And yeah, and they ended up beating him and uh,
Ended his career, didn't
ended
they?
his yeah ended his football career. And so I would say that cameras has actually added validity to these instances happening, because if they weren't on camera, they're let's just say the trustworthiness of both sides would be brought into light, right? And that's where people's instances, whether they made a right or wrong decision when they were younger, that's going to come back to hurt them at that point in time. But just because they made that decision in the past, it doesn't mean that they're not valid and their concerns aren't valid and they deserve to be treated as inhumane. And so, yes, being a police officer is a difficult job. I have friends that are police officers as well. And I think everybody just needs to be held accountable, whether they are being sincere and being respectful and being fair, right? And if those actions in that instance are caught on that camera, then we need to be comfortable with how we're going to be perceived, because it's not only the body cam that is there to protect the police officer, but it's there to protect both sides. And so that is an impartial judge. And I believe that this will it's a continued step forward, in my opinion, for the judicial system, to show that everyone is fair and that they aren't on a specific side, and that every instance will be reviewed as such.
No, absolutely.
So, obviously, we talked about the moment, but in terms of the verdict, I think it's pretty clear whether the intent was there, whether he was in, not George Floyd was in distress, but if the officer felt threatened, all of that stuff was very clear in terms of the whole situation, and that came to fruition. I even heard from police officers and people were saying that he had to go to jail and be convicted, because the whole circumstance, if you're looking at it just a neutral, regardless of the situation, whether the individual was threatening or not, I don't know if that is in the police service guide to how to detain individuals. However, I believe that is, in terms of the risk level, that's one of the extreme methods, right? If you're feeling threatened. And at that point, he obviously wasn't. So I think it's clear. And even when you look at when they read it out loud to him, he didn't seem surprised, right? He wasn't shocked. You didn't see even a reaction necessarily from him. And so it was almost as if he knew what the outcome was to be before that point in time. So everybody was on the same page. I think it was pretty clear cut, but it's good to see that justice is going to be served in this case, right? And that's obviously, it's not a win, but it is, I guess, something.
A step in the right direction, right?
Exactly. To be equitable, right? To, let's just say, people and humanity, right?
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we're all human, right? We all bleed the same. We're all human. And you know what? If people took a snapshot of my life when I was younger, or anybody's life, you can find some gray areas or bad areas, right? Because we're human and we all make mistakes and we all fall, right? So you shouldn't be, to your point, you shouldn't be judged off of a moment in time, right? And even if you get in trouble moving forward, you should still be treated like a human, and that's what it is. And so for, I mean, we'll just say even for a cop, right? Like you're trained. I heard this the other day and it just hit me, and I was like, wow, like this is so true. It's like, as a police officer, you have to be trained that at least 95% of the people are going to be non-compliant off the rip. So why is it when a person is non-compliant, you revert to like shooting them or killing them or something like that? Like you get, and not everybody. I'm just talking about the small amounts where there's the incidents where it's like, how do you get so scared that you forget your training, right? Like when you're playing any kind of sports or even in the military, right? You go to training so much and you train so much for then when you see that and you're faced with that it becomes second nature and you know how to handle that adversity when it happens. That's the whole point of training. So I don't understand why somebody who would train for people to be non-compliant, and you should be, for the most part, de-escalating it or calming them down, letting them know you're there to help them just to get more information or whatever it is, that we don't have that we have so many of these issues, right? Or so many of these incidences that happen, right? Like that's what kind of like I'm trying to wrap my head around, that I can't understand. But just going back to the verdict, it's definitely a step in the right direction. We definitely still have a long way to go. But you know, and all we can do is just continue to move that dial and push it forward, and continue to fight the good fight, right? Like that's all you can do at this point, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums up all that I have to say. But I think just keep moving forward every single day and dealing with those instances exactly as they are in those certain situations, right? De-escalating those situations, and know that some people, you have mistakes that are caught on camera, right? And some people just it's not a good look, right? But as you said, those individuals, they can't have, you don't want them to have that shaky hand. So I just hope that they continue with their training to better equip them to deal with situations like that. And as I originally started with, keep the communication ways open, right? Because then situations like this could hopefully be de-escalated. So
Absolutely,
mm-hmm.
absolutely. That's my hope as well, that we have more situations where we can de-escalate folks and save a lot more lives, and not so many unnecessary I guess accidents like this, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for tuning in. This is another episode of Growth Mindset. Any topics that you'd like to discuss, feel free to put in the comments below, and we look forward to hearing from you.